Working in a consultation with a client, we discovered the time he was wasting adding symbols to his drawing. Basically, every day he used to copy a data symbol around, rotate it, and fix its text, and so on. You can imagine all of the tedious tasks that he have to do if he had so many different places to add his data symbol. Well, with some optimization techniques, we were able to simplify his life and save plenty of time. Do you want to know how we did it? So, one of the first things that we did to simplify my client's life was, of course, he was using a couple of objects with a piece of text next to his data symbol. Uh, so one of the first things that we did is convert this data into a block, right? This symbol, because that way we will have only one piece of object that he could easily move and rotate around. So of course the way we did it was selecting both of its objects and create a block using the V shortcut um, to create a block. So over here, of course, the name of the block was data symbol, and then so I simply proceeded to create the block. So for the base point of the block, I had to be very strategic here and picked a base point that makes sense. uh, so when inserting the block, it will be on the correct location. So that point was not over here on this block, but a little bit over here, because he had to leave a space or a gap between the data symbol. So it would be something around here like so. So that way when we placed the block, he could simply place it like that and still had a space over here. So that's one of the first things that we did, of course, to simplify my client's life, convert these symbols into a block. However, um, when he proceeded to copy, this data symbol around, for instance, from this base point and holding the control key on the keyboard, and then he will, proceeded to copy it over here. um, we could see that he still will need to use the rotate command to align his data symbol like so. So we also wanted to somehow simplify that process and add a parameter so that way the block could rotate automatically. So the way we did it was, um, that was the step number 2. We added a alignment parameter to his block. So the way we did it was double clicking on the block and clicking OK to access the block editor. So over here we opened the authoring palette from the ribbon, and then we were ready to add a parameter, in this case the alignment parameter. So we proceeded to do that, and over here, of course, for my base point, I needed to pick the same location of my block, so it was over here. So what I did was type 0, 0, 0 and press enter, and boom, it jumped to that exact location where my base point was. So at this point I needed to pick a direction for my alignment, so I went up and clicked like so. So Of course, at this point, the block was ready, so I simply close the block editor and save the changes. So now, when my client needed to, let's say, copy his block or move his block around, so from this base point, you can see that the block will align automatically like so. So if I also try to this other one, again the block will align automatically like so. So from that point, we were making some progress. However, we saw the problem that the text wasn't looking or rotating the way it's supposed to be. So this is where we implemented a third step, which was, let me undo this, Control Z to undo, which was to add a attribute definition to this block. So again, the way we did it in this case was we couldn't double click. We could double click to open this block like so, and we were again on the block editor, so we could modify our. So first of all, I checked that the text, the size, so it was 6 inches, so I could delete this text and add a attribute definition. So the way I did it was use the shortcut EDT, and then I proceeded to implement the information over here on the attribute definition dialog box. So for the tag, this would be like an identification. So I said number of data, and then I copied that, and for my prompt I said enter number of data. And for the default is important because when my client needed to insert this block, he most of the time, like 90%, used the number 2 because that represents 2 data symbols, of course. So the default would be number 2, but of course this could be changed in the future. The justification, middle center will work, and the style was arch style. So the text height number 6 inches, that's fine, and click OK. So at this point I needed to specify a start point for my attribute. I picked over here like so. So at this point I finished modifying my block. So what I did is save the changes like so. So at this point nothing really, it looks like nothing really happened. However, it was because we needed to somehow refresh this block with the attribute. So the way we did it was using the AT sync. So ATT sync to somehow refresh again or update the attribute on this block. So following the instructions, what I did is, of course, pick the select option and then selected the block like so and update the data, yes, so like so. So we could see now the attribute, and the beauty of this was that now when my client needed to change this number, he could simply double click on it to update to a different number, for instance 3, and so on. So I'm gonna undo that. And the other benefit about adding an attribute to my client's block was that whenever he copy or move his block like so, he could now fix quickly the rotation of his attribute using the T-orient command. So the T-orient will help to rotate his attribute simply again by selecting the block and picking a rotation. So in this case, I did pick 2 points like so to, rotate his attribute and have it nice and clean like so. So that was the third step that we did to implement to simplify my client's life, of course. And the fourth thing was to check some good practices when creating blocks. Because right now you can see that we didn't worry or say anything about layers and properties of this block. And the way we did it was again open this block and go into the block editor and start inspecting and checking some of these objects, right? Because if any of these objects are placed on the correct layer or on the incorrect layer, and incorrect properties, it will bring problems in the future to my client. So of course I first started with this and I noticed that this was a block actually. So right there we had a problem. We are having one block inside another block, which of course will bring up problems. So I proceeded to explode that block. So it's now simply a polyline. I continue, and this was a hatch that it is on another layer and another color and so on. So at this point I selected everything and make sure that was placed on the layer 0, following some block good practices. So whenever you are creating a block, your objects should be placed on layer 0. The color, of course, by layer, like so. And if we open it, the property palette, we could keep checking some of the properties. So by layer, that's fine, by layer, and so on. So those were some good practices to follow. And the idea is that when we save the changes to this block, and now we place them on a correct layer. Let's say we of course created a new layer, right, on our layer palette. So let's say data symbol, then we assign it a color. Let's say in this case color red, like so. So when I assigned the layer to this object or symbol over here from my home and layer palette over here, so data symbol, you can see that it automatically gets the colors and properties of my layer. And that is because again we did make sure that our objects inside our block were on layer 0 and by block. So that was the fourth thing that we did. And the fifth thing that we did was, of course, to save this block. Let me fix first the text with the T-orient, like so. So the fifth thing that we did was added this block to my client's block library, so he could reuse this block in any of his future drawings, right? Because right now, if we just open simply a new drawing, so let's say I'm gonna open this Autocad template and go to model space. So there wasn't a way to reuse that block because we don't have that block still inside Autocad. So the way we did it was my client had a block library somewhere saved in his computer. So for instance, over here, that's where he saved some of his blocks. So I proceeded to copy the block that we just created with Control C, and then of course open my client's block library and paste it with Control V. So of course I could place it over there like so, and then I could simply close the block library and click yes. So at this point, the way we did the fifth step, which was again add his block to make it accessible in any drawing, was opening the blocks palette right here. So once we did that, there is an option over here that says library, and so in order to add his block, we needed to pick or click this option to add and find the DWG file that we just had it. So it was on there. Let me double check. So the block library was under this path. So library over here. So that's the block library of my client. So once we did click open, and then we went again to the block library, looks like nothing is happening, but again you can see that the data symbol block is right there. So this is nice because now in any drawing, even though your block doesn't exist, my client will have it available to simply insert it from the blocks palette. So that was the fifth thing that we did, again, make it the block accessible to reuse it in any drawing. And the sixth thing that we did was, of course, at this point my client could simply insert his data block by clicking on it and redefine block. Yes, of course. So at this point he could select or place the block like so. And so as you can see on the command line, the attribute was asking to enter the number of data. So at this point my client could simply press 2 and the block will be placed like so. However, there was a sixth step that we could do to simplify this process, which was make Autocad to not ask for the input or the number for the attribute. Why? Because my client, like I said, 90% of the time he used the number 2. So we wanted it somehow to Autocad avoid asking this question and simply put the number 2 on it. So the way we did it was, of course, first let me change the layer to make it current over here, so that way when we inserted the block it will come on the correct layer. So again, I'm gonna erase this block, and now the way we did it was use a system variable called ATT require. So this option or system variable will avoid Autocad asking for the attribute number. So if we press enter, right now we set to 1. So if we set it to 0 like so, and now we try to insert the block again by clicking on it, and again I'm gonna place it over here, click. You can see that it's not asking anymore for that to enter the data number, which is nice. So that's one step less that we need to worry about. And finally, I suggested to my client that there was an option over here to repeat the placement of this block. So simply by checking on it and again trying to insert the block, So he could simply click like so and keep adding some of his data symbol very quickly and very easily, right? Like so. So finally, to fix again all of these um, information or align the text, he could simply use the T-orient command, and of course at this point select all of his blocks and then simply click 2 points on the screen to align his text like so. Isn't that great? So again, this is how we simplified this process for my client and kind of save some time also. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. As always, thanks to these people who support my work, you have another video on your screen to save even more time in AutoCAD. I'll see you over there.